Hi, my name is Molly Sommerhalder, and I'm a certified wellness coach to the International Association of Wellness Professionals and certified yoga teacher. In this video, I'm going to talk about setting boundaries that last and to help you create the life that you want. And so boundaries are a buzzword now. They're really something that we hear a lot about, but we don't really know how to handle them or how we can actually create our own boundaries. We might feel a little lost. And so we can look at all areas of our life and really determine where do we need those boundaries. So those feelings of when we feel like we're giving too much or we feel burnt out or depleted, whether it be at work, in our career, or with our relationships, whenever we feel like we're giving too much but the receiving end is not there, that's usually when we know that we need to set a boundary. And a lot of the times they're reoccurring things that keep coming up because we haven't set those boundaries. And the universe is saying it's time to kind of look at that in a new way. And so one thing we have to remember when it comes to boundaries and areas in our life is that we can only control what we can, right? Control is an illusion. We can't really control everything. We can't control another person. And so when it comes to our own story or our own life and what's happening and what we're doing in our actions, we can only control our part. So there's the other situation or the person's part, and then there's our part. And so that's where boundaries come in. It's that opportunity to look at our part and what we're doing and understand where we need to receive for ourselves and where we need to find that limitation so we can start to give in a loving and caring way, that we're not so depleted that we're just giving to others and we keep emptying that bowl, right? So boundaries are these non-negotiable things that we need to set up in place to allow ourselves to live from a state of love. And so our boundaries can be, again, in that career or relationship space, but they really need to stay long-lasting. When we set a boundary, what happens is then we kind of go, well, I'll make an exception for that person or that thing, and then we fall back into those patterns, right? And so it's important, no matter what is happening, if that boundary is there, you can use that boundary for any part of your life. And so it's really, again, about feeding you first. We can't really serve others until we serve ourselves. So we have to understand what that means. And so looking at boundaries. So what are boundaries specifically? They're, again, those things in place, those non-negotiables that we say no to, or we kind of, say, what, that's, something I don't really feel good about doing. And we say no, and you don't have to give an explanation. Or we kind of, slowly just say, that's not working for me. And we kind of let that thing go. So that way we can move forward with things that are working. So an example I like to use is in our career is, you're at your job, right? Maybe you've been there for a while, maybe you haven't. And so careers and our culture of working, it can be really hard to understand that boundary and put those boundaries because you're afraid to disappoint. And you're afraid, you might lose your job if you put up a boundary, or your coworker might be mad and go to your boss, whatever it might be, right? But boundaries are so important, especially in the corporate world that we're in now. And so one of the boundaries that you can do is, saying, this is when I'm done working at night, right? I'm done at 5 o'clock. I'm going to go home and spend that time with my family, my friends, with myself, whatever you need to do to replenish from the day. And if someone, it's their choice if they want to email past that time. It's their choice if they want to work on the weekends. But it doesn't have to be your choice, and it doesn't have to be your concern. If it's something important, of course, they can, text you and let you know or call you. But you shouldn't have to be glued to your email. So it's setting that boundary and saying, I'm here from 8 to 5. If you need me past that point, unless it's an emergency and something that really needs to be taken care of, I'm really not available. Or there's that time too where you have a coworker that has that project for you and you're like, I have so much going on, and that coworker and that they're just going to give you the project, right? And then they're going to take all the credit for it, or you're going to do all the work. And then you've missed out on what you need to do, and then it flips on you that, your boss is mad that you haven't gotten your work done. And so it's understanding and saying, no, in a nice and kind way. Setting boundaries isn't about being firm and being mad at people and doing it in an angry way. It's coming from a space, again, of that love. So just saying, I would really like to help you. I understand, this is a really big project for you, but unfortunately, I just have so much going on right now. I can't help you. Or, just saying, no, I'm not available at this time. Sometimes the longer we try to explain something, the more we put ourselves in that back corner a little bit. So just give clear, concise, and loving answers can really help us just stick to the point and not have someone, because, they're learning their own story and they're figuring out what they need. And they're also to the point, where they're not maybe taking responsibility. That's why they're getting mad, because they're not taking responsibility for what they need to do or their actions. And it's not so much about you, it's about them. And so the more talking that you give to them, the more explanation, the more that they can kind of back you into a corner. So setting the boundary, being firm about the boundary, and you're setting that boundary with your family too, or your friends, and understanding what relationships are long lasting and what ones have to have the hard conversations and what ones don't, and what ones are no longer serving you and maybe you need to let them go. No one said boundaries are easy, and they're not something that you just take lightly. You really have to look at your life and say, where am I really feeling depleted? And really understand that you have to build a boundary from there. And so you can be able to create that life you want. One of my favorite teachers, Krishna Das, says that, to relieve depression, anxiety, and stress is to be of service to others. And it's so true, right? When we're doing of service in a loving way, we take ourselves outside of the equation. But we can't do that if we're giving to people or situations that are just taking completely and it's not from a loving space, right? So we truly have to come from a loving space and do something because we really want to do it. It sets our soul on fire. Boundaries help us kind of create that soul connection and feel like we're serving that purpose because we have more time to do the things that we love to do, and instead of just doing things to do things. Asking for help is another boundary, right?